Hello everyone, I am Bradley Sward, Associate Professor of Computer and Information Science at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And this video today is going to take just a brief look at special effects when it comes to room transitions, the fade in, fade out effect that can go on between rooms. We're going to use GameMaker Studio 2.3 for this. And I already have my Pong game running, so all you basically need to have is two rooms that you can tell. You don't have to have anything as fancy as I have right now. As long as you have two rooms and you can tell if the different colors. I made this actually blue background just so I could see this a lot easier. And when I click one player game, you can see there's my fade out. Here's my fade in. And play the game, and if I hit escape, it fades out and it comes back in. And if I win or lose the game, it fades as well. So it's a very simple effect. I mean, transition effects can be very amazing, but this is very simple, very straight to the point. I'm going to lose on purpose. There you go. I go, you lost, and then it will bring me back to the menu again. And if I want to quit the game, it just immediately quits. So that's that's the to-do. That's what we're working on today, and that's what I'm here to show you. Okay, so here's my GameMaker setup, and again, I have two rooms that do things. You don't necessarily have to do that. As long as you have two rooms that have a color that is not black so you can see if the thing is working or not, that is more than ample for what you're trying to do today. But I have my main menu objects, I've got my Pong objects, I've got my main menu sprites and my Pong sprites. And as you see here, the only thing I've added on to this right now is a 1x1 pixel black square. 1x1 pixel, there it is in all its glory. And we're going to stretch this thing. There's no reason to create and use a megabyte of storage when a 1x1 pixel that can be stretched and placed and used by your GPU to stretch that thing out is needed. So that's all we need. So just a 1x1, go ahead and scale it or resize it or whatever you're going to do. Go inside there, make it black, and that's all we're going to need for right now. Pure black with purely opaque, non-transparent black pixel. I always call it _1x1 black sprite. That's just how I name it. And it doesn't belong in main menu or Pong. It's, if I was doing this, if I was making a real game over months of time, it would probably go into its own folder called transitions, because I'd like to think I'd create more than one transition for my game as I'm progressing through and making something really awesome. Okay, so we're going to use that. Obviously, we're going to use that 1x1 black sprite. So let's see what we can do. I'm going to create an object, and I'm going to just name it simply for you guys here. You can name it whatever you want. And just be careful, because we're going to be writing code, so you got to make sure that if you're following along and not using the same name, that you are consistent in your own project, or else your stuff won't compile. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to call it fade out, or I'll just call it fader. It's a fader. Fade in, fade out, fader. Darth Vader, whatever, I'm just being stupid about it. Okay, it does not require any pixels or anything like that. And just for the sake of getting this thing started and showing that it's working, I'm just gonna put it into the main menu room just to have it in there for now. Oh, I gotta put it in. Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness, what the heck is going on? Yeah, you gotta put it in the instances layer, Brad. Okay, you got that. And then where the heck did I? My goodness, there it goes. This new GameMaker setup is. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, but it's a little different than I'm used to seeing. Okay, so you got to make sure you put this fader object in there, and it doesn't matter where. It's how we're gonna set everything up. It has no basis on anything. And what I'm gonna do in a draw event for the here and right now, I'm gonna take draw GUI. We're gonna want draw GUI over draw because we want to make sure, no matter what our game is projecting into this view screen, that it's the view, the window, that is being modified on top of it, right? Because we want that just the window to be black. The whole game under it, it doesn't really much matter what's happening. So I want GUI. And just for the sake of showing that it works, I'm going to do draw rectangle. I'm going to draw sprite. And I'm going to do draw sprite extended, because we need to supply all 9 parameters to this thing. Because we need to supply the scaling coordinates of this, since it's a 1x1 black pixel. And so I want to do my 1x1 black pixel. Whoops. 1x1. There we go, black pixel sprite. I want subimage 0. I want it at 0, 0. I'm doing this at 1280, 720, 720p resolution. You can kind of, whatever it is you need to do to make this thing work for you. Rotation, obviously 0. I'm not rotating it. Color, see white. I know it's weird because I'm drawing a black pixel with white tint, but that's what I want. And I'm going to say image alpha is my coloring, my tinting, my alpha. This is my tinting. See white is my tint, and this is my transparency, image alpha. So let's run this, see what we get. And there we go. There's black on, it's blacked over everything. That's what I'm expecting to do. Now the only thing that might throw you off a little bit, and we'll fix this up in a minute, is like if I end up putting things in a different order here in my room, if the fader goes first, what's going to happen? Oh, it still does it. Nice. Okay. Fair enough. I was just thinking that it might draw the fader in behind everything, so you might not see it anyway. But so far, so good. But anyway, I'll show you how to make sure that no matter what GameMaker throws at you, it'll always be on top of everything else. Okay, so we have it working. We have just a blank black background. So let's now try to make it kind of fade in or fade out, if you want to think about it, like, or fade from, from clear to black, because right now it's just black all by itself. Okay, so in a create event, what I want to do, since obviously image alpha is 1 right now, I want to say, give me my image alpha to 0. And this is just in the create, just a starter right here. And it's because now you can see there it's gone, because now it's drawing it at fully transparent. And you're like, wow, what a waste of computing power to try to draw this graphic on top of nothing. All the GPU wasted cycles just to keep the graphic exactly the same. But what I want to do here in a step event is say, I want to add to this thing. Let's see. I'm gonna go over here just for this, and I'm gonna call it fade in speed. And I'm gonna say 0.0075. I think I've practiced this enough times. Like, what does that mean? That means how much alpha is this thing going to change over every game frame that this thing is going at. So all I'm going to do is, if image alpha is 0 to start, I'm just going to say image alpha plus equals this fade in speed. Let's see what this does. Okay, you can already see it. There it go, let go, and there it goes, and then so it fades. And it's cool because right now I can actually change this number. And I can go ahead, and you're going to see at the end of the day, we're going to have some pretty cool code that you can modify yourself, and designers can go in and tinker with all of this without you as the programmer ever having to do anything about it. So if my image alpha is greater than or equal to 1, I'll say greater, no, it's just greater than or equal to 1, I will say my image alpha is equal to 1, and then we're going to have to do something, right? That's basically our trigger to say, oh, I'm in this room, I want to go to another room. And so to make this happen, I need to have 2 states. First off, I need to have a fade in, fade out. So I'm going to say fade in equals 0. I'm going to have fade out equals 1. And I'm going to say, what state am I in? I'm in the fade in state. Or fade in. Whatever, as long as you're consistent. I'm already talking myself into a tizzy over here. And so because obviously the state that we're in right now, this is the fade in state. If my state is equal to fade in, and if we were doing this for real, like if I was doing this with design patterns, if it was anything more complicated than this, I would have separate objects and all sorts of different design patterns going on. Oops, I thought this would fill in and move over for me. There we go. Okay, so if the state is in the fade in state, which it is, because that's what I said, state is fade in, and I go, okay, we're just doing exactly what we were doing before. And something like this, okay, it works. And so just to show you, now what happens if I do something like this? I say, as soon as I reach the apex of this, the top of this, I say, well, okay, state equals fade out. And then what happens now if I take this, basically copy paste it a little bit here, and I say, well, okay, well, what if this is in the fade out state? How about I subtract off the fade out speed? So let me add that here into the create event. I have my fade in speed. I have my fade out speed. And just to show I can make them different, I'll make this a lot faster. I'm going to put 0.02. And so in here, you go, okay. Oh, GameMaker is throwing this at me, trying to make this bigger. Okay, make this a little smaller for you. There we go. So we say, okay, in the fade out state, subtract off. But if this image alpha goes up to and under 0, then make it 0 and make the state fade in. So this should kind of cycle back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for the moment here. So there's that, and then there we go. That's faster. See how that one transition is much faster? It takes less than a second for the whole thing to come into bloom, and then it takes a lot longer for it to go out of bloom. So okay, so I showed it's working. So what if I just do an instance destroy here instead? Let me see if I can get this fast over here for you guys. Okay, so here it goes, and now it destroys. Perfect, right? I mean, because it's gone. It really is gone. It's not cycling anymore. I like the idea of this. So the code is almost there already. There's not much to it, but as I was saying, before, and then I got myself sidetracked, is I have this. This doesn't belong up here. This belongs down here, and then you're going to say, well, what room to transform into? And that's going to be, in this case, oops, I'm just going to hard code this. Everything's hard coded right now. We will make things much better here in a couple minutes. So I say room to transform into will be my main, or my Pong room. And then, okay, so here, Pong room, and then I come back into my step event and I say, okay, my room, or just change room or room go to or whatever. But I can just say room equals, well, actually, let's use room go to. And then we say, okay, that room that I'm going to transform into, whatever I put in as my variable over here, it'll let me do it. And now you'll see, and you're like, well, something ain't right. There it goes, and then it transforms. There it is. But you notice there was no fade back in. And you're like, but didn't you just delete it? I'm like, yeah, but it's supposed to go through the whole fade in and then do the whole fade out stage. And the reason for that is because in GameMaker, when I go from room to room, what happens is GameMaker, when I'm closing out a room, it destroys every object in that room. And then when it goes into the new room, it creates all the new objects inside of that new room. So this thing is destroyed as I go from room to room. When it hits this line of code, this guy's destroyed. So this code is never executed. Never executed. And to get around that, we create what is called a persistent object, which means this thing will basically survive the transfer from one room to another. And that one little click does it. Here's the transfer, and then now you see it. There it goes. And so it's much faster. We're going to fix that in code in a little bit, but now the game runs. Whoops. And we'll fix everything up, I promise, because yeah, every time I do a room go to, it goes to this new room and it does the fade and everything, which is weird, right? But we'll fix it. But that's essentially the thought process. And if you don't trust yourself or someone else to not click that or accidentally unclick it or whatnot, you can say here, persistent equals true. And then it doesn't matter how you set this thing over here. This thing will always take, even if I click this off now, it will still work because I've set the persistence to true. And there it is. There you go. Okay. So we've hard-coded this, which I have no problem with because I know where I'm going with this. Hopefully you do too. And now these should be 3 settings. Basically, if I'm setting up an object of this fader type, these are the 3 parameters I would love to pass into this thing. These are the things that can be changed. And these are the things. I can't believe Arrested Development is like 16 or more years old at this point. No touching. These are the things that, if only a developer should touch, these are the things that designers can touch. Theoretically, right? And like the room you can transform into and the fade out speed, because maybe you have different fade out speeds for different effects and whatever, the sky's the limit when you can think of what you want to do. Okay, so now that we have everything working, right? We basically have everything working. Now I can go back into the main menu room, delete this thing. because we don't want to have it in there just sitting in there waiting. We want it to be generated when I click a button or when I press escape or whatever. I want to go from room to room. I don't need this as part of this, the objects when the room is created. So obviously right now there will be no fade in, no fade out, anything. There won't be anything because we haven't done anything like that. Okay, so there's my quick game. Okay, so let me take a break here on my end for 1 second, and now let's write the code. We're actually going to write some scripts, and scripts have been changed in version 2.3. I'm excited to show you the difference between the old way and the new way of setting up a script, setting up functions. Okay, so let me do things the more challenging way and then show you the better practice, the better way to go about doing something like this. So in my, in my one-player button class, right now it just says room go to. But what if, instead of room go to, I could set something up like this, and I can say var int equals, let me make this a little more readable for you guys, equals, and I go, okay, instance create, create, and I'll just actually make this at a depth for us, and I'll say it doesn't matter what you put, but I'll just put 0, 0, and I can make the depth a big negative number so it's always drawn close to your eye. GameMaker seems like it's changed the depth values since the last version I've been tinkering with, and -999 at least works for my example, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm going to create a fader. And the reason why I'm setting a variable, a local variable, is basically when I go, I want to set these 3 settings to something different. Because, this makes sense. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I really would like to go ahead and say something like this. The inst dot, and then when this thing goes, the object will still be created, but this variable goes away because it's a local variable. It doesn't become a member variable of this class. And just to prove it, it comes and goes. So let's see, we can make it really fast. And just to show things are different here. And so I can run the game like that, and this is on left pressed. And so because the fader object now controls when we transfer from one room to the next. It's not just a straight up go to. I transfer this information into this object that's just been created, modify these values around that were, and take over the default values, and then now there it is. And you can see it's working. But you're like, well, every time I want to change rooms, I have to remember these 4 lines of code. Like, that's ridiculous, right? It just, every single time I do this, and this is just one object. You could have this for hundreds of different objects. How are you going to remember every single object and every single variable you need to set inside of them? That's the whole reason for a constructor in pretty much every object-oriented language. I need to, I pass these parameters into the constructor, and whoever developed that object, that class type, they go ahead and they fill in all the details. And that's what we want to have. But GameMaker kind of has a weird hybrid model because it's object-oriented, but there's a lot going on here where you go, well, I can't really just go ahead and say create an object and then pass in parameters. So we'll have to have a script. And I have a name for it. I'm not going to use my name because I don't want it trademarked and stolen. But I'm saying, but we're going to create a script that basically does this work. And what's cool about scripts now is the script name doesn't have to match what you actually call the function call. So here is my script. And so function script 1, no, obviously I don't want function script 1. I want fade in, fade out to room. And then I'm going to pass in the 3 parameters. And I go, what is the new room? What is the fade out speed or fade out rate or whatever? I'll just call it fade out rate. And what is the fade in rate? Those are the 3 things we want to do, right? And again, GameMaker's letting me down. They're saying it's JavaScript, but I will not. I have always put the braces on their own line, at least in GameMaker, so I'm going to continue doing that. And what I like to do when I set up something like this, I don't need these comments, but what I like to do is when I do this, fade in, fade out is to leave a little comment here so you know how you're supposed to use this. And if I spelled something wrong in there, tough, it doesn't matter right now. So I want to go to Pong Room. I want Pong 2. Pong Room 0.01, 0.0075, something like that. This is how you use this thing. So it's, and if I would come back and tell you more about the parameters if I needed to. But anyway, this function will do the work of what I just said. It's going to create a fader object. Oops, I didn't need to do that. It's going to create a fader object at 0, 0, depth -99, called ints. And these three settings, instead of hard coding them, they're going to be just variables. Oops. And so that's perfect. I mean, we're doing exactly the same thing as we did before, but now it's inside of a function. And now instead of having to memorize all these details, I just have to look at this and figure out what's going on. And if people change this, then I have to go back and change things. But I don't have to do all the remembering, because there's plenty of games and plenty of objects where I'm going to have more things inside of here that don't relate directly to what I'm seeing here, different variable fields and things like that, different parts of the constructor. And so this is my conventional way of getting around the fact that I can't just create a straight up constructor for these kind of objects. What is the problem here? Fade in, fade out room. Oh, it's just saying that we haven't used this thing yet. And so now, with this all said and done, I just have to go back into the places where the room go-tos are, like here. This is the one that's hard-coded for now. And I just have to say, I want to go to the Pong room. I want to have the fade out of 0.01. I want to have the fade in, or I'll just say make it a little faster, or 0.1. And I'll say come in a little slower. And it's done. And we have a function. We have a script that lets this thing work all the time. Look at this. Boom. Escape out. Right now, we'll fix up the other code in a minute. But just, isn't that cool? Isn't that slick? That it just works? And so now it's this one function call here, one script call, and it creates the object, does all the hard work. I supply the details that the designer needs, and that's it. And so coming back to the ball, if I press the escape key, instead of going to, the only thing is I got to fix this up so it goes to the main menu room instead of back and does another level and get another game of Pong. But now there's three ways to get out of this. I hit escape, or here, the player wins or the player loses when it's a one-player game. And that's it. We're done. And for every time you have a fade in, fade out, you choose the room you're going to, and you choose how fast it goes in and how fast it comes out. So since I'm already one goal up, I scored. Oh, shoot. Yeah, well, let's see. The AI should be pretty easy to beat with this. I never made this any of a challenge. I just hope it doesn't take forever. You don't need to watch this. There we go. And I win. And now it goes back. And now there it goes. Hit one-player game again. I come in. I'm playing the game. I hit escape. The game does play while it's going back, but there are ways around that. Maybe I'll show you guys how to do a pause screen at some point, so you can actually go in and just stop the whole game and just have something come up on the screen with a pause menu. I think that's pretty cool, right? We'll do that next in my world in the next month or so. But depending on when you come and see these videos, maybe it already exists. But that's all we got to do. We never have to touch, unless we want to go in and change the behaviors of the actual things that happen, whatever else. We've got this thing working. The object does its job. It changes rooms. It destroys itself. It sets up all the graphics. It only uses one pixel that's stretched out. This, I think it's amazing. I think it's pretty cool. So that covers this whole video of how to do this. So as always, if you have questions, this is one of those things. You may have some questions. I'll do my best to answer them. swardb@cod.edu is a great way to get a hold of me. YouTube comments here as well. My next video for this is going to be a top-down, showing you how to do a top-down or a three-quarter top-down view kind of game. I call it Hub World for my students because it's basically the level picker for their main project. A character is going to walk around talking to NPCs, and from there trigger the minigame levels that they're going to play. And eventually, if they beat all the minigames, then they get some kind of winning game condition. Go, you won the whole game. That's where I'm going from, or that's where I'm going to at least. And this is the end of this video. So thanks for sticking with me as always, and we'll see you guys next time.